Astra Travelers, and welcome to another episode of Tales of Teyvat, a Genshin Lore Podcast. Last week, we got unexpectedly dark when discussing Barbara's past and future chances in the game, but we're hoping instead Hoyoverse just brings us some more information on Teyvat Idol so we could get a little more brightness and cheer in our day again. This week, however, we're going to continue down the ominous and threatening route, and we're going to talk about the Vision Hunt decree in Inazuma. Additionally, before we jump into it, I want to remind travelers to visit talesofteyvat.com to see visual representations of the lore mentioned during today's podcast. Your guides have put them together for you to make things a little easier to understand. But with that being said, let's jump into Inazuma. We haven't had an Inazuma topic yet.
Finally, an Inazuma episode.
This is the first time we're delving. I mean, we delved kind of in Kanomiya, but that's not really Inazuma.
Well, I hope everyone's being electrocuted right now.
Oh no!
I'm electrified. I'm definitely electrified.
Perfect. All the water, the trees, they all should be killing you slowly right now. Before we even get to Inazuma and we're talking with, is it Zhongli and Liwei? And he's telling us where we got to go next. He's like, ha ha ha, good luck. Because he knows about the Vision Hunt decree. And he also knows about the Sakoku decree. So maybe we should talk a little bit about what those two things are and what the difference is between them. Because I know I was a little confused when I first started the game. I thought they were the same.
Yeah, the Sakoku decree is this massive storms surrounding Inazuma that keeps ships from coming to the group of islands. And the Vision Hunt decree is a whole other beast.
The Sakoku decree is very similar to IRL Japan's like border close off for like a period of over, I think, 400 years? And they only traded with the Dutch, which is very interesting.
Because Toma's from Mondstadt.
Exactly. It's very similar. The borders are closed. No one in, no one out.
Right. Wait, so I guess I'm a little confused. So the Sakoku decree, it closes the borders, but there's a storm surrounding it, right? So
Yes.
Ships can't get in, but like also once they get there, people are also sort of like turned away, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they have to come into Rito. Anybody who does actually make it through, because Beto makes it through with her merchant ship and stuff like that. And they have to pay extraordinarily high sums of money to be able to stay, or else they get kicked back out. And all this stuff basically to keep a lot of control on the goods. The people who do not have to worry about any of this, though, are the Fatui and the Shneznayan diplomats. They have, yes. So
Super
they were
sus.
able to get around this, and they can just come and go as they please. But the storm that's actually out there, Raiden Shogun actually creates it specifically to keep people out.
It's like, she was like, having a law about it isn't enough. I need to really show these people I mean business.
You know, it's interesting because the more we learn about the story and the Vision Hunt decree, you start to realize how little Raiden may have had actually to do with any of this. Mainly because there's always, when anything happens in any parts of this game, there's always some kind of Fatui or Shnezayan connection. But like the Tenryo Commission and the other, I all of a sudden just forgot the names.
Tenryo, Kanjo, and Yashiro.
Yeah, and what do they equal?
The three branches of government in the U.S. Have you heard of them? No, I'm just...
No.
I mean,
they
are
have
the
a name, though. They
branches.
call them something.
They're part of the shogunate, right?
Yes, the shogunate. Thank you. Yes, it's the shogunate. That's the word.
I got you. Thank you, Inuyasha.
But also, like, when you say Raiden, who do you mean?
First of all, it's Raiden.
Wow.
It is. It's
God,
Raiden.
Tiff, get it right.
So we were talking about the Sakoku decree. And then the other thing that we mentioned was the Vision Hunt decree. And the Vision Hunt decree is something that was established by the Raiden Shogun to basically steal all of the visions of people that have them from Inazuma. And that leads us into the Raiden Shogun. And who is this that's pulling all of these strings and making all of these decisions?
Before we give a little explanation of who she is, I also just want to point out that we are also going by what we are told in the story from the beginning. We're led to believe that it's all the Raiden Shogun that's behind all of this, but there are others who are kind of pulling some strings as well.
So from this point on, spoilers for the entirety of the Inazuma Archon quest.
Yeah, this is your last chance to jump ship, so.
Yeah, or else I'm just gonna blow your ears off with spoilers. So, like, get fucked. I don't know.
So, when we say Raiden Shogun is a puppet created by the Electro Archon of Inazuma currently. The Raiden Shogun is a puppet that she created to watch over Inazuma while meditates in the plane of euthymia. Did I say that right? Yes, rare. And she is there trying to figure out a way to reach eternity. And the Raiden Shogun is programmed by her to honestly be a hard ass. And the Raiden Shogun technically is the one who started the Vision Hunt decree, but she was convinced by the Fatui and the Tenryou Commission, if I'm not wrong.
You are correct.
Yeah, and just a little more backstory. The Electro Archon, she was originally the sister of a different Electro Archon named Makoto, which we'll get into that in a different episode. And she becomes the Electro Archon after the events of the Cataclysm, or the Cataclysy, if you will. She decides that she wants to go to this plane of euthymia and meditate on the idea of eternity. So she decides she needs a figurehead, a puppet, to play her role in society while she is like off in the spiritual realm. And so she creates this puppet, and actually the first puppet she makes is, spoiler alert, Scaramouche. So Scaramouche is, for all intents and purposes, A's child, sort of like Albedo was created by Gold.
Just a bunch of homunculus babies.
Yeah, so Scaramouche was the first puppet, and then A decided, I don't like that. So she created another one that actually looks like her and the image that she liked, I guess, better, and that was who became the Raiden Shogun.
She goes, I look good as shit. Why'd I make this little emo boy?
Yeah, I'm assuming that that's a form that she just made up, just sort of like Venti is like a form that Barbados made up.
I'll just throw it at the wall, see if it sticks.
She's like, well, the Scaramouche body didn't really suit me, so let me be like this hot woman with a pole arm.
Don't forget, she got pole arm, but she got them sword titties.
Another interesting part of that is that while the Raiden Shogun is the figurehead, like Bea said, I still really is making I always say I. It's A-I?
Yeah.
I-O-U?
AI.
Maybe that's what the puppet is. The puppet's actually AI. We have figured it all out.
I think so.
So A is still making the decision. They still have to like go back to her and like talk to her and get her to sign the checks and that kind of thing. And there's a whole piece that we do within the story of how we actually get to go talk to her as well, where we have to get like, almost like a permission slip from Yaimiko to be able to speak with her. But she is still making the decisions. But on top of having the puppet of the Raiden Shogun, she also has the shogunate that is made up of 3 commissions: the Tenryou, the Kanju, and the Yoshiro commissions. And these groups are the ones who are more so like the arms of the government that's taking care of everything in Inazuma, with the Tenryou kind of being a little bit more in the forefront. They're the ones who are actually taking the visions. They have a little bit more of a badass kind of a side to it.
They're sort of like the police, right? The Tenryou Commission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some characters that are in the Tenryou Commission is Kujo Sara, but also, isn't Heizo?
Yeah, Heizo is a detective for the Tenryou Commission.
Those are 2 characters in there too. So, and then what are the other ones?
So there's the Yoshiro Commission, right? Which is the culture, which is head by the Kamisato clan, which is Ayato's thing. And then you also have Ayaka, his sister, the better one, the better sibling.
Ayato is so sus to me.
Don't forget Toma, the house husband.
Yes, Toma, my house husband.
Wow.
I share him with Ayato. I'm not greedy.
Everyone can have a piece of Toma, just like a small piece.
Not according to Bees. Only him and Ayato get him.
I mean, no, I'm willing to share him with other people. I'm not that greedy. But they sort of had culture, they do events and everything. And then they also sort of work behind the scenes, especially Ayaka, with some help from Toma, to actually subvert the Vision Hunt decree, which is, I guess we'll get into that a little bit more. The 3rd commission, I forget. So I'll let Tiff explain that one.
The Kanju Commission is the last one. They're actually less involved in any of the kind of militant side of things. I'm actually not sure like what their branch would be covered by.
Isn't it trade that they cover because they're on Rito?
Yes. Oh, yes. You're right. You're right.
That's like the girl in Ayato's story quest, right? Like the marriage.
The almost marriage.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they control the kind of like groups of officials that like check to see who's coming over and like we're gonna trade. And it's like, no, you cannot trade. You don't have the right paperwork.
Right. They supervise the borders and they also manage the finances of Inazuma.
So scary. So with that being said, we've kind of set up who some of the key players are going to be in Inazuma as we come into it in the middle of both of these decrees going on. So we have the Sakoku decree, which has Inazuma shutting down its borders, but we also have the Vision Hunt decree, which is basically the Raiden Shogun taking everyone's visions away if possible. So my understanding is that the Vision Hunt decree started about a year prior to us landing in Inazuma.
Yes.
So maybe when we first start the game, hypothetically speaking.
Yeah, it could be. That timeline would kind of work out because we're not even in leeway at that point to say like, you know, we've run into anybody who talks about Inazuma or anything like that. It's probably not until that part of the story that we start learning about this whole other place, which also makes sense because it wasn't out in the very beginning as well.
I have a sneaky suspicion, follow me down this rabbit hole, of like, so we know Captain Varka leaves about a year before the events, like the concurrent events of the game when we, you know, wake up and we're like, oh, what's this? I have a feeling that's probably also the exact same time Sakoku decree as well as the Vision Hunt decree came about. So like it seems a lot of shit started to happen a year before we woke up.
Yeah, because we brought the fire.
Yeah, we did. We didn't start the fire. It was always burning since the world been turning.
Since Paimon found us in like a
Yeah.
little egg in the middle of the water.
Paimon started the fire.
That's the reason we woke up. Paimon was trying to wake us up. It was like, I fucked up. I fucked up.
It's like, I need your help and I feel like you might be able to help me, please. Okay. So,
But just to sort of recap, so we have the Electro Archon. She creates this puppet, which we know in the game as Raiden Shogun. And the Raiden Shogun, I'm assuming that she does both of these things, but she is the one who has been programmed by A to uphold eternity, or A's version of eternity, which means nothing new coming in, going out, everything is eternal, just like lightning. So A has the Raiden Shogun programmed to do whatever it takes, even if it's very cutthroat, dangerous, murderous, to protect Inazuma from any kind of outside influence. So she does the Sakoku decree to block off the borders, and then she does the Vision Hunt decree, which we're just sort of coming into as we get to Inazuma, which means that she's actually going out and collecting visions from anyone who has one.
By the time that we get there, they've literally collected 99 visions within a year, and our arrival in this moment that we have very early on in the quest between us, Toma, and the Shogun is kind of like the 100th, the special 100th episode, special 100th ceremony of, you know, taking a vision. And then Shogun realizes, wait, you don't have a vision.
and we're like, haha, sucker, peace out, Cub Scout.
Exactly. This is why we are the MC, my guy.
So now we're going to take Toma's.
Well, they wanted to take Toma's, but then they saw us and they were like, we could just put you in the statue. Anyway.
So like Al said, you know, the decree has been going on for about a year. We show up to Inazuma, we find out about it, and the first thing we do in regards to the decree is run into Yoimiya. So Toma brings us to Yoimiya, who needs help, and Yoimiya is hiding people in the basement of her father's fireworks shop who have visions, trying to protect them and trying to help them get out. And she's also working with someone that's creating fake visions. So when they get their visions taken from them, It's not even their actual vision. So there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of uproar amongst the people in Inazuma. And I think it's really important maybe to look into some of the characters we all know who have been affected by this decree and who hasn't been, because it's my understanding that people who worked closely with any part of the Tri-Commission weren't affected by this, like Kujo Sera, Haizu, Ayaka, Ayato. Like, none of them were running any risk of losing their visions per se, which makes me very interested in why Toma was at risk of losing his vision, since he does work so closely with the Kamisatos.
I guess because he works with the family, not the commission, perhaps?
They were like, you a maid?
Mm-hmm. And could also lead into why they were using him even for the vision hunt ceremony, which was that big ceremony for the 100th, to almost be a little bit of a look, we can even take his.
He's also very much a public figure, and he sort of serves as a public face of the Yashiro Commission. So I always assumed that the Tenryou Commission was getting sort of wise to the fact that the Yashiro Commission was a part of this rebellion that was building against the Vision Hunt Decree, which ties into the main part of the rebellion in Watatsumi Island, led by Kokomi, which we can get into later. But Toma is, he's sort of like the ambassador of the Yashiro Commission and is a public face of Ayato and Ayaka. So it makes sense to me that he was sort of public enemy number one of the Tenryou Commission to sort of send a message of, hey, we're not going to put up with this anymore. Like, you have a vision, we're going to take it. And your little rebellion is going to stop right here.
I'd also like to backtrack for a second. For travelers who haven't done the Inazuma storyline in a while, or maybe just finished it and are a little confused of the timeline, we kind of jumped. So we start off talking with Toma, who brings us to Yoimiya. We help Yoimiya with a few things, helping people escape. And then we find out one day that Toma has been taken in. Ayaka comes in and tells us that they have taken Toma and that they are going to take Toma's vision away. And there is this huge badass cutscene of the traveler interrupting this 100th vision ceremony and trying to kick Shogun's ass, kind of getting their ass kicked, but getting Toma's vision back at least. There's a lot of stuff in between, but we'll keep it at that for now. And Toma helps us escape. So cute, picks us up, basically, helps us run away. And Toma is then forced to go into hiding. And in-game, anytime you go really close to the Tenryou Commission, the police basically try to arrest you, and you always get kicked out. So the Vision Hunt Decree, they're taking very seriously, and we basically came in and screwed up their big celebration ceremony for it. So we have become public enemy number one in the game at this point.
Like always.
Like always.
We're always the star of the story.
They're taking these visions and putting them on a statue.
Mm-hmm. And that statue is very interesting too. It's the omnipresent god. And that's where the ceremony is set to take place too, is right in front of that big statue that's kind of set up and has, as you first go to Inazuma, you see all of the visions kind of scattered across them and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
The cool parts about that statue is outside of the fact that it has a look that's kind of similar to the little figure that we see in the Welkin Moon, which is interesting just because it is the omnipresent god. She also has an emblem on her chest it looks like a necklace that actually looks like the Eye of the Storm, which is, also kind of cool because it's is that kind of what's going on in the ocean? Actually the storm itself, but it's also on its little platform. And we don't know if that means it was still being built or if it was broken, because we're able to go underneath it and see there's something wrong. So we're not sure if it's because this was built somewhere else and imported, or if it was built there and, just needs to be repaired. And the part that I think is important that leads to why it's even makes a difference of where it comes from is because in the background of our whole story that we're talking about, the Fatui and the Shneznayan diplomats are always still involved back there. So it's something that they actually even brought in.
Wow. I never even thought of that. So You're saying that Sneznaya might have created the statue and sent it to Inazuma?
Yes. Because the Fatui is actually really to blame when it comes down to the Vision Hunt decree. While it bodes well for A's whole idea of eternity, they want to sell their delusions. They just want to market for their delusions. So what's the best way to do that? Make them illegal. People have to get the delusions instead. So it's all kind of like a part of a scheme for them. And there's actually some people, I don't know if it's an actual part in the story or if it's a theory that A actually knows that the Fatui is behind it when she's kind of signing off on all of this stuff, but that she feels like the visions would interrupt with eternity and keeping things status quo in the nations. So she's kind of like, yeah, all right, well, let's just let this go through. But she knows that there's something going on in the background.
I love that this game just keeps on trolling Russia.
I hope they never stop. But also, oh my god, okay, so big ass theory time. I love the theory that the Fatui are actually like, well, not the Fatui, but the Harbingers specifically are trying to go against Celestia, like that idea of a theory. What if the omnipresent god is supposed to, like, they're doing it to create conflict, and you have this statue of an omnipresent god that's kind of like a hated thing because people's visions are being taken away. People hate it, so they hate the omnipresent god, who is the goddamn sustainer of heavenly principles. And that's the theory. But I know I keep interjecting with like random theories, but that could be, subterfuge that they try and do and see how that works in Inazuma. And that way they can even get more people to join their cause, which they kind of do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to bring up the first death in the game.
Wow.
Wait, is it the first death?
Yeah.
The first character death?
First you bring up dead kids last week. Now you're bringing up the first character death.
Oh God. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, what is it with you, B?
Brandon, are you going to start paying for my therapy?
I'm a fun crusher. I'm a fun crusher.
Wow. I
Crush
see.
that fun. Crush that. I will say I did cry at this scene because it's devastating. But Bees, if you want to take it and explain.
No, I don't want to explain.
Bean's like, no, that's where I'm putting my foot down. We are not going into that.
No, we can't. We gotta go back. So
No!
Yes. So I want to go back real quick to visions. So I think it's really interesting that the omnipresent god is someone that no one really knows who they are. And what's very interesting when we see this omnipresent god statue is that we can actually see the visions in it. One of the visions we see on there is Itto's, and there are a few other ones on there that we don't recognize. Additionally, later down the road at the very end of the Inazuma storyline, the Traveler is lent the power of all the, or I should say the ambition of all the people who lost their visions during the decree. And we're able to use those powers and that inspiration to help us fight and win our fight, right? I'm not going to say with who, I'm not going to say with what, for those of you who haven't done it yet. But are there any other characters we know who have lost their visions? I know Itto lost his. It was like he lost it, but then stole it back and then got it taken again. Very Itto.
Mm-hmm.
He still wants vengeance. He's channeling his inner Eula and still wants vengeance on Kujo-Sara.
He wants a rematch.
Yeah, he wants a rematch with her because he actually lost his vision the second time to her in a fight. So while it's usually very devastating and it's being stolen right out from under them, he had to actually take his off and hand it over.
I love that. He's like, God damn it, fine.
Mm-hmm.
Your beetle was bigger than mine. Besides Itto, I mean, most characters we meet still have their vision. I'm trying to think of like Inazuman characters.
Mm-hmm.
Kazuo ran away, still has his. Kokomi and Goru both still have theirs.
There is one who actually gave his to Ayato.
Oh, who's that?
He challenged Ayato to some kind of contest and lost. So he had his vision up for grabs as the reward, and he voluntarily gave it over to Ayato.
Oh, wow. A lot of competitions around visions.
In Inazuma, yeah.
Well, it's not necessarily because it was taken, but Kazuo does have a masterless vision that there is before we make it over to Inazuma, we have to compete in a little fight to be able to see who can win this vision. And it's masterless because its owner died, that we find out in a cutscene, was Kazuo's friend and his oftentimes referred to as Tomo, mainly because of the Japanese translation of the word, but it's also, people just call him Tomo now. There's a nice little ship there that Kazuha and Tomo were more than just friends. But I digress.
Boy, friends,
I want more
friends.
Tomo. I want so much more Tomo because that story is
Same.
just, it's so good. But it's Tomo short, Tomodachi, which means friend. He was killed. Kazuha steals the vision, runs off with it, and then wants to see if he can almost like reanimate it, which he does find out that he can't. Like, you can't just give the vision to somebody and they're just gonna be able to take it and wear it and do all the good stuff with it.
Right.
But he can reactivate it.
Yes.
We'll talk about that in a minute, but continue on. Sorry.
So yeah, we do find out that there is a way to reawaken it. It's just not necessarily, it's somebody who was not granted one cannot use it. Kind of even going back to with Yanfei, who was trying to see how much it was worth when she was measuring it on scales that we talked about a few weeks ago. The visions are very targeted toward the owners or just the people who have been deemed special enough to have them. You can go buy yourself a delusion, but not a vision.
Yeah, can we talk about like what a vision is? And I mean, if Mariah were here, she would just say it's a vision of love. But since she's not,
I didn't know where you're going with that.
Wait.
I was like, who's Mariah?
Mariah Carey? The Mariah, all I want for Christmas?
I mean, I had a vision of love.
You do have a vision of love.
And it was all that you've given to me. So
my vision of love is Kazuha and Tomo.
Exactly.
I think Mariah is a part of the Koyoverse.
We're going to make that happen somehow.
So a vision is given to people. We've mentioned it a couple of times too in other episodes, where a vision is granted upon people who are worthy, who have this ambition, who usually do something pretty miraculous, I guess you could say.
Miraculous.
Sometimes it's a little more blasé. Some people do something really cool. Other people, just like Barbara, just like we mentioned last week, just wakes up with one in her hand.
A lot of people just wake up with them in their hand or like
Yeah.
open their eyes and have one. It's like, whoa.
Itto woke up and it was under his ass.
Yeah.
And it's this ornamental gem, and most of the characters have them attached, to their clothes or something upon their body. It channels the elemental energy. That's how they channel their element. So it's sort of described to us as something that is based on their ambition, which we find out in Inazuma.
Unless you have an animo vision, you just have to have a dead friend then.
Right. You either have a dead friend, which gives you animo, or you're ambitious in some way.
Mm-hmm.
After experiencing some kind of moment of ambition, you are granted sometimes a vision or this ornamental gem by Celestia. And for a long time, everyone thought that it was the actual gods or the archons of each element that was granting these. So people thought that Venti was the one giving out these animo visions, and Zhongli was giving out the Geo visions, and the Raiden Shogun or A was giving out the Electro visions. But that is not true, which we find out from A, because A explains to us that these were not given out by her. In fact, during the Vision Hunt decree, there were no new Electro visions given out.
Which kind of led people to think that she was actually giving them out because she was busy with locking up Inazuma,
Mm-hmm.
and taking away everybody's
Mhm.
visions. It almost leads to the fact that you would think that she was responsible for it.
Yeah, and I also think something really important to note too when it comes to that is that a lot of the people of Teyvat are still under the impression that the gods are giving out the visions. Like, us as the player, we're privy to a lot of information as the traveler. And so we find out that, these gods aren't giving out the visions, but like you guys just said, people assume A must be giving them out because there are no new Electro visions in that year. And I think one of you guys was telling me that Sumeru is even like researching it and trying to figure it out.
Yeah, the academia in Sumeru does a bunch of research, and we're trying to figure out, because of the phenomenon of the fact that the Electrovision stopped being given out during the Vision Hunt decree. You can kind of assume that the academia actually may already know that they come through Celestia or a higher being. It's whomever it is, the omnipresent God, whomever this is, that's giving them out, but they kind of take a little look and go, well, why aren't they being giving out now? So it must be or Raiden Shogun who's giving these out, and not just because, like, why else would they just randomly stop?
Right. But when you look at A's voice lines, one of them says, really, so in all this time, no new Electrovisions have appeared in the outside world. Well, what can I say on this topic is subject to certain constraints, but
Contracts with Zhongli.
it is not by my will that visions are granted or denied. The key is people's desire, and, well, there's another side to it too. This voice line blew my mind because she's saying that what she can say on this topic is subject to certain constraints. And then she says the key is people's desire, and, well, there's another side to it too. And she doesn't say anything about it. So this is really like leading me to believe that all of the Archons are muted by some kind of power. Like they are not allowed to talk about Celestia, because we know that these visions are being granted by Celestia in some way, because that's confirmed by Venti at the very end of the Mondstadt questline. A is really confirming that, like, well, we're not giving out the visions. That's happening in Celestia, but I can't talk about it. And why can't she talk about it? And that sort of makes me almost forgive Venti and Zhongli for not telling us anything about Celestia or visions, really.
They have an NDA with the Sustainable Memory Principles.
Yeah.
aka Mihoyo. Hoyoverse has the NDA.
I hope one day that I come into this recording and find some kind of connection back to the Fatui. I'm not going to make one up, but I'm going to find it.
So you think, what do you mean? You think the Fatui?
I think that there's something, like, I don't know, there's just to me, Celestia from the very beginning always seemed like, it was heaven. We're all these like happy gods and they're just taking care of everybody. I mean, until I realized that they threw a freaking nail down on a mountain, killed a bunch of people. Then it was like, maybe they're not so nice. So then it made me think of like Mount Olympus and all the, Greek gods kind of all hanging out in a court together and just being jerks.
Venti actually has a really interesting line about the Tsaritsa and how they used to be in communication until 500 years ago. And he sort of makes it seem like something happened to her that changed her. And now she won't talk to him.
The Tsaritsa? Now the Tsaritsa, that's
the Cryo Archon.
Okay.
Yeah, the leader of the Harbingers.
Well, that's why there's a lot of like debate out there that like the Tsaritsa like lost a loved one, or possibly like someone probably died in the cataclysm that she cared about. And I know way back when, during our very first episode when we talked about Kaya, we even brought up that there's like some weird chance that the Tsaritsa could be his mom. So like there's a lot of possibilities with the Tsaritsa losing love. But I do want to say, I do not think the Fatui is involved in anything with the visions, because they're creating delusions and they are trying to like give themselves the power. And for our travelers who don't know, a delusion is basically a man-made vision. It can be very dangerous. It can kill people. And I think our greatest example of that is Tartaglia. During your battle with Child in the Golden House, his second phase where he becomes Electro is his delusion state, and he openly admits that it exhausts him. And the third state, his foul legacy, is probably from his like abyssal powers, we think, not confirmed.
Yeah, and the first death that we see in this game and Inazuma is also because of a delusion. Rest in peace, spoiler alert, Tepe.
Tepe. Another, again, bringing up the dead people.
Oh, yeah. But I did want to go back. We were talking earlier about visions and how it must be some sort of ambition and how there's something else going on. Shogun alludes to there being something else. Lisa has quite a few voice lines that are also suspicious of what visions are and what they possibly could be used for. And Lisa almost suggests that a vision could be bad and that it could be more of like the gods are watching you.
What does she say?
Before I find the voice line too, for our travelers who don't know, in a interview that Hoyoverse did spontaneously, they openly admitted that Lisa is dying. Basically, it's wild. It's crazy.
So much death. Goddamn.
She basically took a book, read a book or something that gave her wisdom she shouldn't have, which I find very interesting now after doing Sumeru with the canned knowledge and the forbidden knowledge and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it said that it took half of her life, basically. It cut her life in half, I should say.
Maybe that's why she left Sumeru. It also explains why she's like so carefree and, sexually open. Her lifespan has been cut very short and she's like making up for lost time.
Right.
Let me get into those MOOBAs.
So Lisa says at one point in her voice lines, visions, they're a necessary device in controlling the elements, with you being the sole exception, of course. As for why that is, perhaps we can find time to talk about that a little later. Later, when she's talking about herself, she says, a vision may seem like a great tool, but one day the power one accumulates always finds a way to turn back on you. Should such a day come for me, so long as you're around, never mind.
Turns back around on you. Interesting.
She also used to be the Witch of the Purple Rose, which is interesting. A lot of people have thought that maybe she had more power with her vision prior to whatever happened. So, there's a lot of questions around that. Tingari actually has a line about Lisa. And he says, Sino has mentioned her before, an extraordinary genius with a veritable wealth of knowledge and talent. A pity that she returned the Mondstadt so long ago. Perhaps in the course of her studies, she witnessed the horrifying side of knowledge.
That is so crazy. She must have witnessed the forbidden knowledge. I wonder if maybe part of her losing half of her lifespan or whatever is tied into her avoiding Elazar. And maybe that's tied into like why she knew to contact Sino when Kale showed up in Mondstadt in the manga. I did also want to say that Venti explains to us that people who are granted visions are called allogenes, Allogenes, allogenes. That's someone who has a vision. And what's interesting is that the word Genshin is used in place of allogene in the Chinese version of the game. It also technically means in Chinese original god, apparently. So they're sort of using it, I guess. There's some weird translation things going on, but Genshin Impact, the actual title of the game, is sort of referring, some people think, to these humans that have visions, which could become gods. They're sort of demigods.
That's interesting. Ooh. Well, I think what's really important here too, and I'm going to backtrack again, I apologize for that. But Brandon, you had mentioned that there's some weird things going on with Celestia, and it seems like there's a contract in place here. And there's a lot of talk out there that, Celestia might like Skynail Inazuma.
It would what?
Skynail! Because basically the Ryan Shogun was going against some of the main principles of Celestia, which is like, you don't mess with Celestia, which you were saying earlier, that they must have some contract with Celestia that's keeping them from talking about Celestia.
Well, I actually read that A is among the Archons, she's actually the closest to upholding the properties of the sustainer of heavenly principles. Like her whole euthymia, like eternity thing is like the closest that an Archon can get to heavenly principles.
How is that so though, if she's breaking one of those main rules, which is like you can't mess with the flow of time and life?
Good question.
Like her searching for eternity is like the exact opposite of what the Celestia want. So that's really interesting.
I mean, did they know what she wanted?
So that's like the big question, right? Is does Celestia really know what the Raiden Shogun has been doing? Do they know that A, she's on this hunt for eternity, but B, that she was removing visions from people when she's supposed to be, she knows so much about it from Celestia, and she's supposed to be backing Celestia up. And I think that also goes back to what I think Tiff mentioned it. The Vision Hunt decree was not A at all. It was the Raiden Shogun being convinced by the Tenryou Commission and the Fatui. And in the end, A had no idea what was going on because she's out meditating, on like a retreat and has no idea what's happening and has programmed the Raiden Shogun to protect eternity at all costs. So when the Raiden Shogun is approached by the Fatui and the Tenryou Commission, she is convinced that this is the right thing to do. So there's also a part of it that's like, Inazuma may have been going against Celestia, but A didn't know that. So maybe you're right. A is the closest to the gods, but her
Right.
nation isn't.
And I always sort of took it as the Vision Hunt decree only started a year ago. So maybe Celestia hasn't really caught on or noticed yet in terms of, something afoul happening.
Now I was under the impression actually that I does actually know what's going on. That where the Raiden Shogun is the one who's, the enforcer and making sure it's happening, that she actually does know. She doesn't care, but she knows.
Oh, I was always under the impression that, since she programmed the Shogun, that she was just kind of like living in oblivion. And because when we go to the final battle of Inazuma, we fight the Shogun first. And then we go back and, we fight Signora, but we go to fight the Shogun and then get transported into the plane of Euthymia. And I think us causing it like a ruckus is really only what gets us to the plane of Euthymia. I don't think if Signora also hadn't died, that we would have ended up there.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong though. I just always assumed A was just like maybe she had an idea that something was happening, but just didn't care.
Yeah, I agree with that, which is I think what Tiff is saying is like she was aware of it as like almost like something in the peripheral of her vision that she didn't really care about. It was like a mosquito flying around, and she's just like, well, that's far enough away that I don't need to worry about that. I can just keep meditating.
Yeah, like it wasn't gonna mess up her plans or anything like that. So.
Right.
Hold on. A mentions or like goes in depth into this in the second part of Yar Conquest, when she's trapped in a continuous battle between herself and the Raiden Shogun. And basically, to sum it all down, she's like, fuck, I programmed this thing really well to protect eternity and did not think of the quote unquote consequences of what that is. Because like also eternity is also just change constantly. That's the one constant of the universe, is that there is change. So like being stagnant kind of goes against the entire idea of what eternity is.
But that happened after, I think that battle started after the Vision Hunt decree.
Yes, but that's when she goes more in depth into like the explanation of who A is versus who the Raiden Shogun is.
Yeah.
She probably like thought, this is fine, this is cool, it's also only been a year, but didn't know the actual impact it had on her people because she's been in Euthymia the entire time.
Yeah.
Once we are taught by Yai how to go in there ourselves without like being taken into Euthymia, we learn all this stuff. I will say A is complicit in what happened. Very complicit.
Yeah.
Her programming of the Shogun created this situation.
I really love that Yai's sort of like, you're being a brat, like snap out of it.
I love Yai. Yai's best girlfriend.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that, I guess that's always was my assumption, was that like A knew something was happening but didn't care enough because she thought she had programmed the Shogun well enough to not fuck it up. Because I feel like, again, if A knew that visions were being taken away, I feel like she would know that's going against Celestia. Like, that's like literally going directly against like the one thing Celestia does in the world. And when she goes to battle the Raiden Shogun later in her second story quest, she's doing it to reprogram the Raiden Shogun as well. Like, she's had some time away, she's acknowledged all of her wrongs, and she's like, all right, we gotta fix this shit. But I mean, I definitely think it could be either or. Like you guys said, it's like the mosquito in the room that she ignores, or it's something that, like, again, she knows there's an object outside. Is it a ball? Is it a plane? She does not know.
It's very disturbing, I mean, just like with Venti and Zhongli, it's like these archons are impacting all these lives, and it's sort of at their whim,
Right. I think it's really important to talk about the repercussions as well of having a vision taken away. When we are doing the main Inazuma storyline, we go down this whole like path of meeting 3 separate people who have had their visions taken away. And like the main thing that ties them all together is that none of them are acting like themselves. I think one person like loses their memory, another one has no ambition. So having a vision taken away from you is kind of like taking a piece of yourself away as well, which I think is really interesting because we haven't seen like a playable character have their, of course we know Itto and possibly Kuki had their visions taken away, but we haven't actually seen what that looks like with a character. And I know there's a ton of like fanfics and stuff out there, especially after Sumeru, of like Sino giving up his vision and other characters giving up their visions. But
I mean, Diluc gave up his vision voluntarily for years, but he had a delusion which he carried with him. And then eventually he sort of felt his ambition come back, which is when he returned to Mondstadt and, you know, reclaimed his vision. But that actually leads me to this line in Diluc's character story where he describes what a vision is. And I found it really interesting because he says, to the lost, perhaps a vision is a beacon of light given by the gods to help them find the path forward. But to those with conviction, a vision is simply an extension of their strength, a medium for channeling their willpower, a tribute to the experiences that have shaped them, and a testament to the story of their life so far. And that sort of makes me wonder, I don't know if he means when he says to the lost, perhaps a vision is a beacon of light given by the gods to help them find the path forward. I don't know if he means that as in people who don't have a vision see them like that, or if he means that there are people with visions who are lost and the vision is sort of a guiding light for them. If the latter's true, then that would explain why some people lose their visions and they become lost.
Right.
Whereas other people who have quote unquote conviction, you know, give up or lose their visions and they're fine. I mean, the whole Watatsumi army is filled with people that, you know, were former vision bearers and they retain their faculty at least enough to like fight in a war against the shogunate. So
that's very true. And I think that also goes to what we were saying earlier about Shogun's line as well. Like she says, the some get visions from ambitions and others, well, I can't really talk about that.
Yeah, well, she says part of it is their ambition, but then there's something else. There's another side to it too, but she doesn't say what the other side is.
Like I would almost say Kaya is a really good example of someone who was like desperate when they got their vision. Like, you know, Kaya was battling Diluc, and a lot of people like to say that he got his vision because it saved his life. But at the same point, like, Kaya had just lost Krapus as well. He had just told his brother a huge secret, and he just realized that he probably was going to lose his brother as well at that moment. So if Kaya had survived Diluc's attack and not gotten a vision, Kaya probably would have been very lost and like unsure of what to do in his life. So I feel like he got his vision to like tell him that he's worth it and to keep going. And I'm sure his whole life lying to people, you know, also
right,
would have made him feel lost as well. And I think even Kale getting a vision, you know, when Kale in the manga leaves Mondstadt and goes to Sumeru, I'm sure there's a huge feeling of being lost and confused. She's dropped off to live with Tinyari. She can't read. She's never lived like a non-angsty teen life, you know, being angry at the world.
Right.
And I'm sure when she got her vision, that was also more about the conviction and helping her. Not about the conviction, I'm sorry. That's more about like helping this lost soul.
Like a guiding light, right. I also think it's really interesting how visions appear when they're granted and how that's different for different characters. So like Lisa's and Shenha's sort of fell into their hands, but Ayato's and Kuki's, they appeared while they were like in a different room and like among their belongings. Sucrose's appeared in her cauldron while she was doing an experiment. So there's something weird going on there where like some people have it appear like right into their hands and other people just discover it.
Right.
This also leads me to, I just want to mention this. There's a character in Sumeru. Some people have not made it to this part in the story yet, so I'm not going to spoil who it is, but there is a character in Sumeru that the Traveler and Paimon witness receiving a vision. And the actual text, and I made it gender neutral to help avoid spoilers, but it says, from their chests glows a light with the warmth of heartbeat, faint yet bright. They try to cover and touch the light with their hands, but the light source burrows into their hands as if consciously. When the light fades out, a delicate ornament appears in their hand. So that's sort of like sounds like what might have happened with Lisa and Shenhe. It also is interesting that they say the light with the warmth of heartbeat, because in Benny's vision story, his vision is actually flashing to the beat of his heart. So that's really interesting. But then, you have Ayato and Kuki and Sucrose and like other people that where the vision just sort of appears like among their things and they're not even there. So I think that's really interesting. Also, there's, these masterless visions, which is the shell of a vision after someone dies. And I did not know this until today, but Ningguang and Mona, their visions were masterless visions before they were activated while they were holding them.
I knew that about Mona's, but not about Ningguang.
Yeah. Ningguang was like, I could sell this. Like, I could make so much money off of this. And then while she's thinking that, it activates.
It's like,
in her
bitch,
hand.
don't sell me.
Well, I mean, that's Ningguang's ambition, right? She wants to make money. And then Mona, she was given a masterless vision from her teacher as a teaching aid and was carrying it around with her until it activated. And then, of course, you have Kazuha, who has a masterless vision of his dead friend, quote unquote friend. We all know it's his boyfriend. That activates, during the finale of Inazuma, but it only activates temporarily, which makes us wonder if maybe that's because he already has a vision.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you can resonate with a vision permanently if you don't already have one, but only temporarily if you already have one.
That's very interesting. And, I was just thinking about all the different ways people get visions too. Haya and Ayaka both got theirs in fights with their brothers, which is also interesting. Like, there's that essence of like, you can get it in a battle of sorts. Like, Ayaka was training, Kaya was gonna die, but they both still got it while mid-fight too, which is crazy. Like, that can just happen. Like, imagine being in the middle of a war and like a beautiful little glass ornament falls to your hand and protects you, and now you have fire powers. Like, what the hell? But
Right.
also, there's a few people in the game who kind of are like, I expected to get a vision, and one of them is Albedo. Like, he kind of just was like, getting a vision was expected by him, he says. And he says that when it formed, he merely looked down to verify that it was there and then continued on with his day. So like, did it just appear on his
sus.
collar and he was like, oh, lit, all right. Like,
Sus.
Beto. I do want to say on the day of this recording, it is Whopper Flower Albedo's birthday. It's the first day we ever heard about Whopper Flower Beto.
Oh, really? Oh,
Everyone
wow.
on Twitter is celebrating.
Jesus Christ. God, look.
They're like, we may swappy.
Oh my God.
I also saw something that said that they're really upset that Albedo is not in the upcoming rerun.
Oh my God.
Look, we got him for what? Late October? Whichever it is. Fuck it.
Because he's the Mariah Carey of Genshin and he should be here for December. Just like a storyline with him, like, I'm biased, obviously.
Mariah is all up in this episode.
I know, is she?
Jesus.
But I do think that's all the time we have for today. Thank you, travelers, for hanging out with us today. If you'd like to keep up to date on everything we're doing, you can feel free to give us a follow on Instagram, Tales of Teyvat Pod, or on Twitter, Tales of Teyvat. We'd also love to encourage our travelers to please send us an email to talesofteyvatpod@gmail.com to let us know if there's any topics you'd really like to hear about. If you have any crazy theories or anything, we'd love to hear them and respond and chat with you guys as well. I'm sure a lot of you have a lot of thoughts on some of these topics because we have a lot of thoughts that don't even fit into these hour-long episodes. So please feel free to let us know. Again, our email is talesofteyvatpod@gmail.com. Next week, we're going to be talking about the most Tartagalicious man in the world, Child, Ajax, and Tartaglia, the 3 named ginger boy harbinger with a cute brother. So I hope we get to see you guys next week when we talk about some fun angst. And otherwise, travelers, safe journeys. We'll see you next time.
Bye, Electro Nerds.